Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today. It is February 1st. It is approximately 10 p.m. at the moment, and I want to talk to you about when we see far left activists attack, disrupt our communities. They get arrested, they create riots and protests with the absolute intention of instilling fear into the public. How do we feel about that? So I'm going to go into that because of an event that happened tonight, and I'm going to share with you my details. But first, if it's the first time you're seeing our channel, we welcome you. We thank you for being part of our audience. We want you to know that we do long-form political commentary. And every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you, reaching out across the world to hear your voices, because we believe in the First Amendment. We believe in hearing what you have to say about the issues that matter to us all. In addition, I need to mention that we are currently on our backup system. Our main system failed, and we are repairing that. Otherwise, we'd be doing this as a live stream. That being said, today, at approximately 8:45, I was notified by one of my contacts that there was a protest in Binghamton, New York. This is the southern tier of New York, about 4 hours away from New York City. And this protest that occurred, initially we thought there was as many as 100 people that, 100 police officers, law enforcement that had gathered together to arrest what was initially told to me somewhere between 30 to 40 people. That's alarming news. It's shocking news, and it would have been major. But that wasn't exactly what happened. With further investigation, getting actual video, photos, eyewitnesses to speak with me about this and to see the situation, it actually was approximately 8 to 10 far leftist protesters were arrested in Binghamton, New York, Johnson City, New York to be exact. They were arrested for trespassing and resisting arrest in some cases because they were protesting in the name of Tyre Nichols, the man unjustly killed by police officers or former police officers in the state of Georgia. Now, part of this makes sense. Part of this doesn't make sense. And I want to make sure that it's clear to you that the intention today, February 1st, had nothing to do with Tyre Nichols. It had nothing to do with whether police have acted in a proper manner or not in New York State or Georgia or anywhere else around the nation. The fact is that these far leftists are taking every opportunity they can to disrupt the lives of average American citizens and to instill fear. That's their goal. That's their only purpose. Now, I'll explain what I mean here, and I want to walk you through. So, yes, the initial information wasn't quite correct, but I did validate this, and it's really amazing to me. Let me show you. I've received today, and if I had had it sooner, I would be at the event. I would have live streamed it. But this was sent out by unknown organizations. We believe it may be Citizen Action. We believe it may have been Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, also known as PLOT, which is a radical offshoot of the far left ideology. It may have been the local Antifa branch in the Binghamton-Broome County region. But this was sent out to many individuals, and we received a copy. And as you can see, this was indicating that today, February 1st at 7 p.m., they wanted to get a group of their allies, individuals that were in favor of protesting about what happened to Tyre Nichols, which we're fine with, to go and protest what the police in Georgia had done. That's fine. No one has an objection to this, and that's absolutely okay. The key here is this was never about Tyre Nichols. I know that because, as you can see on the picture that I am showing you, this was to be targeted at a local grocery store, a supermarket called Wegmans. It's a chain. And this is their private property. Now, in Binghamton, New York, we have a public square, the MLK, Martin Luther King Square, with a statue of Martin Luther King, where individuals can gather and speak. And in fact, Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, Citizen Action, BLM, and possibly Antifa have all gone down to that square to voice their opinion about many issues. They could have gone there. They could have gathered and protested in many public spaces. But instead, they decided that they wanted to go to a local supermarket and disrupt the ability of American citizens, of their neighbors, to be able to buy food so that they could instill fear in their lives. Because that's the only reason why they went to private property, and in particular a supermarket, to make their protest. Because they wanted to instill fear. They wanted to be arrested. They wanted to make news. Because they thought that 15 minutes of fame would help improve their position. I disagree. I think that's absolutely wrong. And this is something they knew was wrong. That they were going to private property to disrupt people's lives and the activities of people's lives, to push their message, to make people afraid in their everyday lives, and to make them obey. That is my impression of it. And I believe that they were trying to do this, especially since they were taking on, if not by Antifa, to be like Antifa, and it's suggesting that everyone, as you can see, it is written in there, everyone should wear all black clothing and wear masks. Well, this is to hide your identity so that you will not suffer repercussions from this, from your jobs, supposedly. And they wanted these individuals to look like they supported Antifa, being in all black. This is a symbol of Antifa and their allies being in all black at these protests, to make it seem like there's a larger Antifa movement in the southern tier of New York, which is not the case. That is not a reality. But many people would look at this and go, well, I agree, like I do, that Tyre Nichols should never have died, that was a violation of the law, and that is upsetting, and protests should happen. I'm all in agreement with that when you don't break the law. When you don't invade other people's property and disrupt their lives, I agree. Protest all you want. Peacefully protest. But this is not the intent. They wanted to instill fear, the fear of Antifa. They wanted to instill fear, the fear of being able to live your life and without kowtowing to these tyrants in every single step. And that's the problem. So today at 7 p.m., they did in fact go to this private property, this supermarket, and they disrupted everyone. The supermarket shut down for the safety of their shoppers and the general public, not knowing what these individuals would do, knowing that in the past these individuals have taken over huge swaths, and there has been, in the wake of their presence, great deals of violence and damage, I should say, a great amount of damage to city property and individual businesses throughout the southern tier after each of their kinds of protests. They were concerned. So Wegmans shut down the store, disrupting the ability of people to feed their families on February 1st. They were told by law enforcement, who came quickly to the scene, that they should leave the property. It is private property. They cannot protest there. These members of Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, Citizen Action, these far left activists, as best as we can understand, chose not to leave, which means they intended to be arrested. Their goal was to be arrested because they feel that this is a badge of honor, that this is something that they can brag about amongst their friends and their peers, to say, look, we got arrested standing up for somebody's rights. That's not what they're doing. They're bragging about inflicting fear into a community where it was unnecessary, to push an agenda that probably everyone would have agreed with if they just had a protest, a regular protest. But instead, they wanted to harm people. And again, I'm emphasizing this because that's the difference. And we're seeing this across the nation. And so they did get him arrested. In fact, one of the individuals arrested was former Mayor Matt Ryan. You can see the image. If you want, you can stop the video and look at it. You can see it online as well. The man in blue in the center there is former Binghamton City Mayor Matt Ryan, who's also an attorney at law, a lawyer. Matt Ryan, I believe, may have violated the terms of being a lawyer by breaking the law, going onto someone's private property and disrupting the public, instilling fear, and when told to leave, refused to leave. He also, as I understand, was not only arrested for trespassing, but I believe he has been arrested for resisting arrest. That sounds like something that you would lose your law license for. And it's also interesting that this is someone who is a former mayor of the city of Binghamton, that he has devolved, apparently, to a level where he is committing crimes. And again, we believe that Tyre Nichols was absolutely unjustly killed, and justice should be served. The officers have been arrested. They have been charged with murder. The process is going forward for them to be punished, and it should. We are seeing changes in law enforcement in Georgia, as it should. Many law enforcement agencies across this nation are reevaluating their processes and their people, as they should. Why did they need to break the law? Why did a former mayor and lawyer need to knowingly break the law, purposefully break the law? That's a very important question we have to ask. But it wasn't just him. In addition, a individual who is alleged to be a member and or leader of the Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, a far left faction of BLM, very closely aligned with Antifa. We have reported on them many times. Masai Andrews was arrested on the scene as well, we believe for the same charges of trespassing and resisting arrest. Masai Andrews is a New York State employee. He works for the state of New York. And yet he is actively looking to disrupt New York City, New York State, our laws, our lives, and our livelihoods. Actively. He's been arrested before in protests at a Columbus Day parade. He's been arrested in Rochester, New York for second-degree rioting. He has a long history of arrests for disrupting the public, instilling fear into the public for his political agenda, and he is directly aligned with some of the most radical far-left organizations in the southern tier of New York. So I have to wonder about this. In fact, I went on and I sent these messages on Twitter, one to a reporter because I didn't see his answer to this question, but more importantly, I also reached out to Binghamton Now. And I know the anchor. This is a talk news radio. In fact, the only talk news radio program in the southern tier of New York, approximately 30 miles. No one else has got competition. Isn't that a wonderful thing? And I asked the reporter, Bob Joseph, who I personally know, and I have been on his program in previous years, though not in the last 2 or 3 years. I've been on his program many times, and I asked him a simple question. We know Matt Ryan is very friendly with the Binghamton Now, the news talk program, WNBF's talk program, and we asked him, are you going to ask him why a lawyer knowingly broke the law? Because Bob Joseph won't ask that question. Bob Joseph is incredibly friendly with the far left and seeks to excuse their actions, and that has been his history since 2014, when I've been on his program multiple times and I've called into his program. He has a history since 2014 of supporting the far left in every action they have done, every protest, every arrest. So I don't think he's going to ask this question, but he should. I think we all should. And I think this is important to understand. It's one thing to say that we disagree with something in this nation. We all have the right to protest. It is a First Amendment right, and I stand by it. It's part of our free speech. It is important because in speaking up, whether or not everyone likes that, that allows the opportunity for change to take place, and hopefully change for the better. I think that's important. And I think protest is a part of that. I'm not upset that any group of people decided that they wanted to protest what happened to Tyre Nichols. Please do. I'm upset that they knowingly decided to instill fear into their fellow neighbors. I am upset that they decided to violate the law because it would get them a better headline, because it would impress their peers, because to them this is a badge of honor. And they know that the news media won't ask simple questions like, why is a New York State employee involved in this? Why are we, New York State, paying for someone to instill fear into his fellow neighbors? Why are we letting a former mayor get away or be given a pass on breaking the law? A lawyer, how can he maintain his law license when he's actively, purposefully breaking the law? Which is unnecessary. And that's the biggest part. There are areas, public areas in the Binghamton Southern Tier region that are made just for people to express their point of view. Purposefully made that way. The MLK statue is expressly for people to share their thoughts and opinions that these same far left organizations have used in the past to share their voice. And the news media has covered them doing these protests, these gatherings, repeatedly. So it's not like they're not getting attention or that no one would notice. Apparently, they needed to step it up. They were waiting for this opportunity, I believe, to be able to go out and to try and force people to obey their desires. Because that's essentially what they have done. They disrupted the lives and the ability of people to be able to eat and feed their families, to instill fear in them that at any point in living their life, these radical organizations, these radical groups, some would even call them domestic terrorists, are going to come down and bully them into obeying their desires, to take away the freedom of the public to choose as individuals, to either support or not support their ideas. I am quite sure, and I am certain, that if they had said that they wanted to go down to the Martin Luther King Square or in front of City Hall or the state offices here in the Southern Tier and wanted to protest the death of Tyre Nichols, I would have gone there, not only as a member of the press, but more importantly, because I support the protest of what happened to Tyre Nichols. But the reason why I didn't get this notice, and I usually do, but I didn't get this one, is because they were looking to be arrested. And they only wanted their coverage of their arrest to go out, which would be edited and tailored to be very specific to show the things they want to show, to push their message, and to instill fear into the general public. And I think that's wrong. I think we need to call that out. Again, this isn't about Tyre Nichols. It's not about anyone else who's been arrested or any other event in America, because quite honestly, it had nothing to do with any of them. Let's be honest. They were looking to be arrested. They were committing crimes on purpose, and this was meant to put fear into the citizens of New York State, their neighbors, and disrupt their lives so that they could get their agenda. They have an agenda. It is political. Many people do not agree. In fact, if people did agree with them, they wouldn't need to do what they did. They wouldn't have sought getting arrested. In fact, they would be at the Martin Luther King Square and would have been making their voices heard. Instead, they had to instill fear to make people believe what they believe. It's no different than what we see in Iran. And it's terrifying to me. Now, I want to hear what you have to say about this, but I wanted to be very clear about what we did in fact see. And I want to sum it up one more time, because it's astounding to me that people, the news media, aren't reporting it in this manner. These individuals used the wrongful death of a young man in a crime which is actively being investigated, and we believe these perpetrators will be punished for the crime that they committed that we have all seen in the video. And they used that opportunity to instill fear into a community, to try and force people to obey them, to coerce people to follow them by threatening their daily lives and their daily activities. And they've been arrested, which they are venerating, which they are cheering amongst their peers on the far left as if they did something positive. I've already heard from many people, many of my sources, who were either eyewitnesses or know of this incident, and they've already said they achieved nothing. They annoyed the public. They turned people away from their message, their ideology, because of the brute force tactics that they employed. Because this was an attack against the public. It was an attack against people's daily lives. It was an attempt to instill fear. How does the far left not understand that? Even if they think they're right, maybe they think that God has spoken to them directly. Maybe they believe that they have the only eyes to see the truth. Be that as it may, when you use fear tactics, which some would call terrorist tactics, to try and force people to obey your will, you're not going to get converts. I think that should be very obvious, but it seems not to be. I'm looking forward to hearing Matt Ryan, who I personally know. And I'm looking forward to Matt Ryan tomorrow talking on WBNG and talking about this event, his arrest, and why he chose to actively break the law, to become a criminal, to endanger his law license. I would love to hear from Masai, a member of Political Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, plot, about why he actively and continuously seeks to break the law while being paid by New York State, an organization, a government that he does not believe in, and yet he thinks it's okay to instill fear into the public. Masai has declined to be on this channel or to be interviewed and has threatened me in the past. And yes, Masai, I still have the picture of the text that you have sent me threatening me. And as for Matt Ryan, Matt, you still have my phone number. You still know where I go. You know where I live. You've been here before. Matt, I've interviewed you many times. If you dispute or dislike anything that I've said, you know for a fact that all you have to do is get in touch with me. I will give you as much time as you wish to be interviewed to dispute anything that I have to say. You've always had that opportunity, and I've always given you that opportunity, and you choose not to. Don't complain to me 5 years from now about this and say, well, if I only knew. You know me. Call me up. Come on over. It's not that hard. So with that, I ask you this question. How do you feel when you see the far left activists come into your community, disrupt your life with their message saying that you need to obey them, that you must do what they say? Does that make you more or less interested in their message? Does that help you get behind their goals? Or do you resist? Or do you reject them? Do you think it's the right thing for them to break the law and ask for forgiveness even though they knowingly did what they did? I'd love to hear what you have to say. I look forward to seeing your comments, and I look forward to seeing you every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I thank you for your patience as we are on our backup system and we are getting our main system repaired. I look forward to always seeing you and knowing that you are in good health. Be well. I will talk to you soon.